Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone, welcome to the Mad Programmer. In today's tutorial we'll be covering user input and data types. Previously we discussed escape sequences. What are they? Why we use them? And how we use them. If you haven't seen that tutorial, please click on the link or in the description below. Now without further ado, let's get started. What are data types? When writing a program in any language, we need to use variables to store information. Variables are nothing but reserved memory locations to store values. So when we create a variable, we reserve some space in the memory. We may like to store information of various data types like character, integer, floating point, double floating point, boolean, etc. Based on the data type of the variable, the operating system allocates memory and decides what can be stored in the reserved memory. Now there are many different types of data types in C++, but we will be covering the main data types. Type name tells the name of the data type, bytes tell the size of the data types, other names are basically what else they are also called, and the range of values. Remember, this is one of the most important things since it tells the limit of the value we can store in that data type. We won't cover all the data types, but we will cover the main ones, such as int, character, float and boolean. We are also going to distinguish between the different types of integers, such as there's a short int, a long int, signed int, unsigned int, and vice versa in float also. And now let's get started on our program. Let's open our compilers. Staffs.h is a file generated by Microsoft Visual Studio IDE Wizards. It describes the standard system and project-specific included files that are frequently used but hardly ever changed. Staffs.h is a precompiled header. It basically speeds up the project, meaning once it is compiled there is no need to compile it again. One very important thing is that you can use either double quotes or greater than and lesser than symbols for other libraries, but in the staffs.h library you can only use double quotes or you won't be able to access the source files. Upon adding the greater than and lesser than symbols on the staffs.h library, we get an error that we cannot access the source files. Let's add the double quotes again and get started on the program. Let's start with integer. An integer has 4 bytes and a range from -2,147,483,648 to 2,147,483,647, meaning it can only store values in that range, which is why the command prompt displays the value 15 when we run our program. Now let's add the maximum number in range to see the output, and run the program. Now let's add a number above the maximum range and run the program to see the output. As you can see, the command prompt does not show the number we entered. Let's make that number a negative and see the output. We get an error since the number is not within the range, but within range the command prompt displays the value when we run the program. Now let's try the short integer. Short integer consists of 2 bytes in size and has a range from -32,768 to 32,787. Let's run the existing value. As expected, the value is not displayed on the command prompt since it's out of range. Now let's enter a value on its range and run the program. The result displays on the command prompt. Now let's increase the value and run the program. As expected, the command prompt does not show the value since it's out of range. Now let's focus on unsigned integer. It's a size of 4 bytes and a range from 0 to 4,294,967,295. Let's enter its maximum value and run the program. The value is displayed. Let's try adding a negative value and run the program. Since the value is out of range, the entered value is not shown in the command prompt. Now let's focus on float. Let's see the main difference between an integer and a float. Let's also edit the program. First let's enter a non-decimal value. We get the value we entered. Now let's run the program and enter a decimal value. Over here we just get the number and not the decimal. since integers cannot support decimal numbers. Hence we have to use a float to show the decimal. Let's run the program to see the result. Here we receive the decimal value. Now let's focus on a character. It has a size of 1 byte and range from -127 to 127 or 0 to 255. Let's run the program and enter a numeric value. Characters can only store a single digit, which is the first digit of the value. A character can store both upper and lower case alphabets. To store the whole word or sentence we will have to use string, which we will cover in our next lectures. And finally let's move our attention towards Boolean. A Boolean has a size of 1 byte, and a range of 0 which means false, to 1 which means true. Boolean is used to check the true and false of conditions. Let's edit the program. Let's declare two booleans, b1 which is equals to a equals to b, and b2 which is equals to variable a greater than variable b. Let's run the program. As you can see on the command prompt, both the conditions came false. Let's edit the condition to make it true. Let's run the program. Now we get one true answer, since the condition is met. That's all for today. Our next lecture is on arithmetic operators. If you like this video please click the thumbs up button, and do comment your point of view, or if you guys didn't understand anything, I'll reply to each comment. And lastly do subscribe to my channel to be notified on future lectures.